We're talking about writing essays, specifically the connections paragraph and the conclusion paragraph. Here's an overview and a walkthrough for those two paragraphs. So we've already watched videos on the planning page and the introduction, the body paragraphs. Today we wrap up by looking at the last two paragraphs. You see them highlighted here, the connections paragraph and the conclusion. First up, let's look at the connections paragraph. What does that mean exactly, connections paragraph? A connections paragraph relates the ideas in your thesis to yourself and or to the real world. How does it work? The connections paragraph has three parts: the connection, an example, and the significance. Those three parts, pretty similar to claim evidence reasoning. What does each part mean? Connection, that's one sentence. This is where you give a real world or personal connection that you have to an idea from your thesis. That's one sentence. Next, example, a specific example of your connection, either from your own experience or some real world occurrence. That should be 1 to 2 sentences. And then lastly, the significance. Here's where you explain the importance of your connection and relate your example back to your thesis. That's another sentence or two. As you can see, the connections paragraph is short. Only 3 to 5 sentences at most. Let's see how all three parts look, starting with the connection. So the connection is one sentence that broadly relates your thesis to yourself or the real world. You see my own example in the red text here. This is based off that sample essay prompt about, is Jonas's society more a utopia or dystopia? So my connection here is talking about how Jonas's society, it's similar to many failed utopian experiments throughout real modern history. Lastly, you can and should use personal pronouns like I, my, we, if you're talking about your own experiences for your connection. All right, let's look at the example part. Here's where you give a specific example that shows your connection, either from your own life, history, or the modern world. So in my own example right here, you see that I bring up the infamous real world example of a failed utopian experiment called Jonestown back in the 1970s in Guyana. Notice here that it's a specific example from your own life or the world around you, and you do not need to give any text evidence. You do not need to give a quotation. You are the evidence. Lastly, let's look at the final part of the connections paragraph, your significance. This significance statement shows the importance of your connection and it relates your example back to your thesis. So here's how my connections paragraph might look. Only 4 sentences, all 3 parts there together. Okay, let's wrap up by looking at the conclusion paragraph. What is that? A conclusion is your final paragraph and your last chance to make an impression on your reader. How does it work? It's got 2 parts: restate the thesis and so what. What does each part mean? The restate thesis, that's exactly what it sounds like. You rephrase your essay's thesis, but do not just copy your thesis. Rephrase. That's 1 sentence. And then you finish your whole essay with your so what statement. It's exactly what it sounds like. So what? Why does your essay matter? You leave the reader with a final thought about how your thesis is relevant or relates to something broader than just the text you've analyzed. Your so what statement should be a sentence or two. So let's look at both these two parts specifically, starting with that restate thesis. So as we said, you're not just copying your thesis statement, you're rewording it. You can see my own example here in the red text. I'm capturing my ideas from my thesis. My thesis was about how Jonas's community is a dystopia. I have those same thoughts, but I've just switched up the language, I've reworded it. You see in the bottom table here, I've also given a couple examples on some strong conclusion sentence starters and some weak sentence starters. Okay, let's look at that so what statement. Here, you're thinking to yourself, why does your essay matter? Why should your reader care? Why is your thesis important? Make it matter in the real world. Make it so that you're leaving your reader with a lesson, but also go out with a bang. Try to leave your reader feeling curious or wondering. Leave them buzzing after they finish reading your essay. So here is my conclusion paragraph. Super short, as you can see. 3 sentences. I restate the thesis, and then I wrap it up nice and neat with my so what statement, which is 1 sentence. All right, this video has shown you about connections paragraphs and conclusions paragraphs. As you saw, both of those paragraphs are really short. We've now watched videos on the planning page as well as all 5 paragraphs. If you'd like to rewatch this video or any of the others about how to write or plan different parts of your 5-paragraph essay, you can find them in the highlighted document you see here called English Basics 1-pager. It's in our Google Classroom on the classwork page under additional materials. Thanks for watching.